yeah,
you?
the 60 minutes thing was it was great to see everyone, sort of going out. I think they were probably going to be a bit surprised by the amount of people on Carnivore who came out and said, hey, actually this has really changed my life, and in so many different ways. I've lost all this weight, gained all this health, got off medications. It's not about making money. It's exactly the opposite. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a matter of educating people on how to eat and what to buy at the grocery store. There's no products involved. And so it's the antithesis of, all the other ones that they sort of lumped me in with, which is, just trying to sell weird products and things like that. But of course, that's not what it is. And,
Hmm.
it would have been nice if they had kept in some of the things I said on that, because we did talk about that. And we spoke for like
Yeah.
half an hour on air or on the camera, and then for like hours behind the camera. And so they knew my position. They knew that I thought that this was something that, I knew got people off medications, got them to save money. And that I thought that was a major issue with the healthcare crisis. Was the healthcare crisis really was that people were getting sicker and sicker and sicker. We're getting, more and more people dependent on the healthcare system, the sick care system, and medications. And like, that's a multi-trillion-dollar a year expense that isn't getting us anywhere. We're spending trillions of dollars buying things that are making us sick, and trillions more dollars fixing that and managing that sickness, and that's a complete waste of resources and also people's life and time. So they're not as productive. They don't have as much time to dedicate towards their career, their family, and curing the actual problems in the world. So I mean, it's in just such a massive waste of human resources, life, talent, and money. And that's what I was saying. I was saying that this is something that we can get away from, and we can actually save trillions of dollars and redirect that towards something more useful. And so, of course, they go like, "Oh yeah, this is just a scam trying to make money." And it's like, kind of missed the whole point
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I remember speaking off air for quite an extensive period of time last time we chatted, and yeah, I can assure you, Doctor Anthony Chaffee isn't a guy that's trying to make loads of money, and he's not a shill. He's not trying to like steal from you guys. He is promoting good, solid information, and he's getting the right people on to talk about the right topics, which make a difference to people's health outcomes. So, yeah, I did find that quite a bizarre sort of, from my sort of position, like knowing who you are and how you kind of work. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's not much to sell, is there? Like, what are you going to sell? Like, I don't know, beef protein powder. There's not a lot on the market to really promote. So, yeah, I get that.
No, and those are all adjuncts. They're not anything that you need. You don't have to have that stuff. It's just something. It's just a product that is meat only. And if you want, something like that, like the Carnivore bar, or like a meat only, beef only, whey protein only, and nothing else, protein powder, those are those options, which I think is good, because once you do start entering the commercial market, well, then these big companies have to take you seriously. If there's no commercial benefit for them, then they're just going to like paper over it and try to push their products. So, if they look at that and go, hey, actually there is a financial, there's something to be gained here financially, then, they're going to be more likely to switch gears. Someone is to say, hey, maybe they spot a trend and go like, hey, why don't we beat the curve and get on top of this right away, and help promote it. Then we'll be, the big dogs in that space. That would be amazing if they could do that. It sort of happened with keto. There are bigger and bigger companies making more keto products. Unfortunately, a lot of them are, highly processed, a bunch of, different, chemicals and artificial sweeteners and things like that, unfortunately, which are not really much of an improvement, but at least it's something, at least things are moving in that direction. But at the end of the day, what it's really about is, getting people healthy and having them just eat meat, just eat food. And that's the whole point. You don't need a specific product to do this. You just need to eat meat and just don't eat all these other things. That's it.
Yeah, it's hard to get people away from this, particularly like younger folk, like my sort of age, would be like this consumerist approach. Like, what supplements do I need to buy? What extra protein powders do I need? What herbal extracts do I need to support myself? All these different things. And honestly, like when I speak to most people, I say, "How would you feel before taking them? How do you feel after taking them? Was there a noteworthy benefit?" And oftentimes, the answer is no. So I think save your money, buy some steaks, and have some eggs if you like as well. You know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's it.
Mm.
That's all you have to do. And I talk to people and they ask about what supplements you need and what this you need, what that you need. And like you don't need anything. It's like it really is just eat meat, don't eat the other things, and that's it. And it's I like it because it is simple. Some people will say, well, oh, that just sounds really boring. You're only eating the same thing. Like what animal eats a varied diet? They all eat boring, monotonous diets, and yet they love them. They really enjoy them. They taste great to them because that's what's giving them the nutrients. They're like, this tastes great. I want to eat this, and that's what meat tastes like to us. It's amazing all the time, and then it stops tasting amazing, and yeah, I'm done. I don't need to eat anymore. But when you're hungry, it tastes fantastic, and so yeah, if I have always only wanted to eat steak anyway. That's always been my preference. I've eaten all the other things because I felt I'm obligated to, or I've been forced to by my parents when I was a kid. But if it was up to me, like I would have only eaten meat when I was a kid. Only. I never wanted to eat anything else. Maybe garlic bread. My mom made some killer garlic bread with a lot of butter and a lot of garlic, and it was just like that was delicious.
It's the
But
butter, though, isn't it?
yes, yeah, it was. I liked garlic too growing up. Like now, I don't really have a taste for it. Like if it sort of mixes in, I'm like, nope, nope, don't like it. But just because it covers up the taste of meat, and like I like the taste of meat, I don't want to cover up the taste of meat. So, but yeah, definitely, the butter definitely helps with that.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. One thing I went to, which maybe about a month ago at this point, was a public health collaboration in Sheffield in the UK. And basically, what this was a talk with different featured guests, special guests like yourself, Dr. Sean Baker, lots of like top people in our carnivore kind of space. There was also some people in the vegetarian plant based community as well. Um, and you delivered a very slam dunk approach, I believe, for the carnivore argument. And the what happened was on the Saturday, it was like the main event, which is what I actually stayed for to make sure I watched because I can't sit down for very long, so I thought I'd time my sort of seating periods, So,
Yeah.
and it is like a full house, honestly. Doctor Chaffee was in a position where he could sort of see everything that's going on. He basically had a screen in front of him. He could sort of speak to the person that he was debating with through Zoom because he was unable to make it because of different circumstances. But I just remember seeing Doctor Chaffee's hand raised on Zoom like all the time, like this guy's got it wrong. This guy's got it wrong. This guy's got, and it was like the same thing over and over again. Like, and I was like, so I sat next to my friend Ben Hunt, you might know, and he sort of ran up to the people at the front, the organizer, and said, Doctor Chaffee's got his hands up there. Make sure you don't neglect him because he's got some good insights here. You did deliver a really good presentation, and I'm glad you did because you had a limited amount of time, but you really went into depth, and I was quite shocked at the amount of information you could pack into, like, was it 10, 15 minutes? And you still have more to say. So I just remember watching you and Dr. Chidi. Dr. Chidi was a plant-based advocate. And he was like, he's watching you talk and he's like, yeah. But he didn't have any real rebuttal. Then he mentioned the China study. Then the whole audience went, ooh. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good that people are more aware of the flaws and things like the China study and Eat Lancet and the blue zones and things like that, because it's it is something that they go to and say, hey, well, look at these studies. This really supports plant-based eating, and on the surface it does. I mean, they certainly made the case for plant-based eating in that, but I mean there's a lot of problems with them, and there's a lot of just assumptions and guesses. I mean, one of the things that he said that I had sort of meant to bring up, but ended up just not, it sort of felt out of place by the time I had a chance to. He mentioned with the China study, it said, well, what they found is that people in cities had much worse, health outcomes and heart disease and all these sorts of things than people in the country. And the people in the country were very, very healthy. And that's because people in the country were just eating very simple plant-based food, and people in the city were able to afford meat. And I was like, well, true, but they're also able to afford cigarettes and alcohol and junk food and processed garbage and candies and cakes and sweets and all these sorts of things. So, and then someone's like out there and there's pollution, there's all these sorts of different things. While some guys out in a rice paddy out in the middle of just God's country and just beautiful area with fresh air, green grass, and, they walking around barefoot and just loving nature and loving their environment and hard life, but also hard work, and they're moving their body and they're exercising. And unfortunately, the plants weren't the ones doing that. Unfortunately, they were poor and they couldn't afford meat, and that's what they had to eat as a result was plants. And that's the history of humanity. That's since agriculture was that the people who could afford it got meat, and people who couldn't would eat mostly plants, and they were generally shorter, less healthy, less well developed, died younger. I mean, that's been the story up until the 20th century, that the upper classes were healthier and lived longer than the other classes of people. And there can be a lot of factors involved in there. I think that it was in no small part because they were able to afford meat as well, and they afforded other things too, but they also got access to meat. So, I mean, and that's something that we saw, you just before and after the agricultural revolution. Right before the agricultural revolution, people were, taller, had larger brains, wide straight jaws, perfect teeth, no cavities, and no signs of like poor wound healing. Directly after the agricultural revolution, brains are 11% smaller, they're 5 inches shorter. They have evidence of poor wound healing, different sorts of tuberculosis scars and infections like in their spine. Evidence of that. Crooked, broken ass teeth, small jaws, wisdom teeth aren't in. They're all impacted teeth and messed up, cavities and missing teeth and all these sorts of things. So, that's a stark contrast immediately after we know that we started eating a lot more plants. So that's actually quite compelling evidence to me, maybe not so compelling to other people, but I think if that doesn't at least make you think about it, then you're in a spot of denial, honestly, because that's a very clear contrast. As a population, people were eating a lot of meat, some plants, they were gathering things like that after the megafauna died off after the last ice age. People that didn't have hundreds of millions of buffalo to hunt like the Native Americans, they had to go to other means. So maybe they had livestock, maybe they had other sorts of things, but they also moved to plants and agriculture. And in those populations, they did worse, and so, they maybe had some animals and hunter gatherers, this, that, and the other, but then they moved into more farming and eating a lot more plants, and their health suffered as a result of that. And they weren't even necessarily exclusive carnivores after that. In fact, those populations were like on average 5'9", and they dropped down to like 5'4". But the Native Americans in the 1800s, as far as the 1800s, when they were still eating buffalo, these guys were like, on average 6'4", 6'5". I mean, most of these guys were pushing 7 feet tall. They were huge, absolute monsters. And there was a study that showed that the Plains Indians in the 1800s that were only eating buffalo, maybe they had some other things sometimes, but the vast majority of what they ate was meat, and buffalo predominantly. They were the tallest human beings on Earth, right? The average height of a population equals the average health of the population. The average Chinese adult male is 5'6". Average adult male in America is 5'8", right about, pre-agriculture when we were hunter-gatherers, right? So still not all that great. Then we moved to more agriculture, eating less meat, not even processed plants, just more plants, not as much meat, on average 5'4", right? Big drop. So it makes a big difference when you reduce the amount of meat that you're eating and increase the amount of plants you're eating. It's just not as healthy. It's, and that's what the only real hard evidence looks at and finds. And, there's numerous holes in the China study, especially the China study, but also, the Eat Lancet study. I mean, that was just garbage. So one of the top, well, really the top epidemiologists and doctor and medical researcher in the world is, and probably ever, is Professor John Ioannidis from Stanford. He had, everything goes by citations and how many people cite your work, and that's how relevant it is, right? And so he is one of the top 10 most cited people in any discipline of all time. Okay. So, and he's still like halfway through his career, right? So he's still like, this guy's got decades ahead of him. And so, and I mean, he's just really one of the most prolific and, and successful research scientists in history. And he looked at the Eat Lancet study, and he, and published something saying that the Eat Lancet study is more science fiction than science, right? This is all crap. This is just all crap. The blue zones, that's another one. They say that, oh, well, these blue zones, these people have a lot of centenarians, people that live over 100, and they're all plant-based. No, they're not. No, they're damn well not. That's an assertion that they make, but it's false. I was just talking to Dr. Bill Schindler, who was a retired professor of anthropology and paleoanthropology at University of Maryland. He was just in Sardinia, and he was in the epicenter of the first recognized blue zone in the world. And he said that these people not only eat a meat-based diet, it's like a whole animal approach. It's just all like they just cook whole sheep and like a whole big chunk of cow, just on a spit, and they just cook this whole thing. They sit down, they have the whole family and the whole community come in, they all eat together, and it's like raw cheeses, raw milk, and just a bunch of meat. And and they had plants, but as like a garnish, as seasonings, and like that's it. They ate meat. That's what they ate, and they were extraordinarily healthy. They would have like wine and things like that, with their meals and everything. But it was like what they ate was predominantly meat. It was not plants. It's not plant-based. That's an absolute lie. The only population in the blue zones that were plant-based is Loma Linda. And that's because they're Seventh-day Adventists who are religiously anti-meat because their prophetess in the 1800s, this is all true, I swear to God, people can look this up. Their prophetess in the 1800s had said she had a vision from God that said that meat makes you feel lustful, makes you horny, and lust is a sin, and therefore don't eat meat. So meat is sinful, don't eat it. And so they based this entire religion around not eating meat. And so they started the field of nutritional sciences. They have Loma Linda Medical Center, which is a medical school run by and for Seventh-day Adventists. I remember looking at this. It's in California. I remember looking at this when I was applying to medical schools and just looking at it, and it just said flat out, you cannot apply here unless you're in the Seventh-day Adventist church and you need a letter from your deacon or whatever saying that you're part of the church. And I thought that was interesting. So that's who they are. And they started the field of nutritional sciences in 1917. They wrote the first textbook on nutrition, university level education nutrition in 1925. Still in print. It's the most recent edition is still being used in colleges, and they are hugely successful. Kellogg's cereals, that's Harvey Kellogg was a Seventh-day Adventist. And so, they own, they are fabulously wealthy. They're one of these, they seem to be one of these, people behind the curtain, that are pulling the strings, and they don't need to be out there in the forefront, like you and I saying like, hey, this is wrong. They're in behind and they're orchestrating all these things. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, pulling the strings of industry and media to get what they want and to influence people in the way that they want to push their products, but most importantly, to push their agenda. And so, you look at that and you start to realize why nutritional research and nutritional studies are just complete and utter garbage. It's because it's being manipulated. Coca-Cola alone spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the NIH, and Kellogg's does similar. So does Pepsi and Nestle and all these companies. They just put out drums of nutritional research that is just garbage. And so that's what people, well, this study said that, seed oils are great. I'm like, I just couldn't care less. I could not care less what the Kellogg's, what the makers of canola oil think about canola oil. I just don't give a shit, And so you look at the Loma Linda. Of course, they're plant based. They're the only ones in the blue zones who are plant based, right? But it's not because they're plant based that they're living longer, Because you look at Mormons, they don't have these same dietary restrictions, right? But you know what they do have restrictions on? They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't do drugs, they don't take stimulants. Most of them don't even drink coffee or caffeine or anything like that, and so on. They have the exact same average life expectancy as the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, right? They don't have the same dietary restrictions, so that's nonsense. And one thing that the people in Loma Linda are doing as well is not smoking, drinking, doing drugs. They're also not eating a bunch of processed garbage unless they're eating those Impossible burgers, which I don't know why you would, because they probably have a hand in making them or funding them, so they probably know exactly how toxic those things are. So, it's nice that you get the whole crowd going, groaning when he brings up the China study. As just an aside, just as someone who was phoning in as well, we couldn't hear the audience at all. So I didn't hear people, respond, with jeers and boos when the
honestly, he was very much in your favor. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so that's interesting. But yeah, I don't think he would have heard that. So I think he went, well, no, China study and so great or whatever. Like if he was there in person and he said the China study, he might have been a bit, put off by that. I don't see how you couldn't be, by the crowd turning on you like that. But it is good that people are starting to understand that and understand that, when people bring these things up, it's like, that's not a compelling argument.
Yeah. One thing that was flagged up to me at that point was everyone there for the most part was someone that's like a nutritionist, dietitian, healthcare professional, some sort of doctor, researcher, scientist. And a very vast majority of people were in agreement with the carnivore diet. So it's not the scientific community, the health-based practice, these sort of people aren't going towards plant-based. It's not the consensus. And I think what would have been a really good point at the start, if either you or Dr. Baker said it, obviously going back in time, you can't, it's hindsight, isn't it? But you might have said, what is the hierarchy of evidence in your mind? Then they would have said, clinical trial, mechanisms, epidemiology, whatever. Then you'd have pointed at that epidemiology and just said, that's an absolute waste of time. It doesn't tell you anything. So it's very bizarre looking at that. Just out of interest, did you have any kind of talks behind the scenes with any of the plant-based folk, like after the fact at all? Or was it just as it was?
Not from the conference. No, didn't really talk to any of those. Chitty and I just sort of, chatted, exchanged niceties, beforehand. And, and that was it. And just sort of were pleasant to each other. He seems like a very nice guy. And I, and the thing is I have absolutely no doubt that he really means well and really does want the best, for his patients and is really trying to come through, from an evidence-based perspective. He absolutely comes across like that. I don't think he's one of these paid shills. He definitely does not give the impression to me of that. He does seem, quite earnest in his approach. And so, you can have a conversation with those people, because you all want the best for your patients. You all want to find out what's the right thing, and that's what he thinks is the right thing. This is what I think is the right thing, and we can discuss it. And that's really, really okay. It's when you get, the problem comes when you have these people that are just ideologically driven. It's just like, no, this is the only way, and or the planet's going to die and you're evil and blah 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 blah. I mean, like you can't have a rational conversation with people who are irrational, or the ones that are just they are being driven by different motivations besides actually trying to help people. You have to have that common ground of actually being earnest and caring about what happens to people and what happens to the world, and just understanding that like there are right and wrong ways of doing things, and let's try to figure out what the right way is for everyone to benefit. So if you're talking to someone who's not really not really working on those with those tools, then there's probably just no point really talking to them, except for showing what how dishonest and incorrect they are, so that other people can see that and go like, maybe I won't listen to what this guy says.
Yeah, completely. It's funny about the debate because I actually asked to be on a panel of people to talk about different health practices, nutrition practices, in my local area. So my partner Sophie's auntie was running this wellbeing festival. She's plant-based. It's a predominantly sort of vegan, plant-based community that would go to it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something in the fashion of Doctor Chaffee here, and I'm going to do a plants are trying to kill you sort of presentation.
Nice.
Honestly, I swear to God, and I'll get to this point a bit later, but what happened was we had a dry run. So basically, as we're chatting now, just off air, kind of not in front of anyone, a chat. So I presented my argument and said, I know you guys are of a different mind to me. It's completely fine. I've been asked to make a presentation based on health outcomes, my own experience, and what I know, what the science does or does not say. And I basically explained to them all the things that you kind of said in a roundabout way. Not everything in that much detail, but I had about 10 minutes. So I just picked all the obvious things, basically. Species-specific diet, all that sort of stuff. And so we're good to go for the festival, the panel, the talk in about, I don't know, it'll be about 2-3 weeks from now. And two of the panelists out of, I think there's 4 of us in total, went to the organizer and said, I don't feel comfortable with him being on the panel.
Oh, Jesus.
And basically, I said to them, I appreciate you've got a different viewpoint to me, so I'm not trying to like force my opinion on you, but I'm going to present the facts as I see them, and then you can make your own decision up. I provide a very balanced argument. I said, there is a toxicity to different plants. The lower sugar ones, the lower fiber ones are going to be probably less detrimental for the most part. So it wasn't like I was just saying, just eat one thing, because I was going from it from over here, And basically, the promoter, unfortunately, she had a handful. So it's either she upsets me, who's almost like a distant family member, or she upsets 2 of them, and they won't come to a talk again. And I sort of said, you know what, I'll just sit out. So what I ended up doing was I made a post about it. I think a YouTube video. Got quite a few views on that one. Like Carnivore kicked out of Health Talk, that sort of thing. Then I actually presented my presentation as I would, kind of like how you did. So it's not nearly as good as yours, of course, but it was a 20-minute long video. It's got a similar sort of type, like the demonization of plant foods or something, or animal foods, something like that. Also put special mentions, Dr. Baker, everyone like that. And yeah, it's quite a popular video. So it's funny looking back and just realizing there's always going to be pushback against you based on, like you said, ideology. People don't want to be told they're wrong. And funny enough, they were promoting like plant extracts and vegan supplements, I imagine, and, vegetables and stuff. So it just goes to show I wasn't trying to sell anything, guys. I was just trying to give some information out. And of course, I run a nutrition consultancy, and it would be helpful for me to promote that. But the chance of me getting a lead from that would be so slim in a vegan sort of, festival. So it's just funny to see. But I'm glad you had that platform, and I hope that these discussions between yourself and people that are plant-based advocates can continue.
Well, it is a shame that they didn't let you speak, because obviously you have to have those conversations. And if you can't be challenged and you can't, go up and have a conversation with people, then how much do you actually believe in your side? And I think that's the problem. They probably don't believe all that much, because it was never in question for thousands of years that meat was the most important thing that we could eat, and that humans were carnivores. And insofar as we were known to be apex predators. Apex predators are carnivores. That's just like a definition in terms. If you're an apex predator, you're hunting things, you're eating other animals, and in fact, you're the most dominant, hunter. You're just the most dominant species. So, apex predators are really definitionally carnivores, and we know that humans have been carnivores forever, and that's what we taught in school, probably up until now. God knows what they're teaching kids in school, who knows? It's all insane at the moment. But when vegans were sort of pushing this, in the 80s, it was just, well, fat makes you fat, don't eat it. So people wanted to go plant-based. Oh, plants don't make you fat. Plants don't have saturated fat. They don't have cholesterol. Oh, okay, so that's better for you. And, and you can just eat as much plants as you want. And you won't get fat because there's no nutrition in it. There's no calories. There's no fat. And so there you go. You're not going to be getting fat if you just don't eat fat. Obviously, that was wrong. The obesity rate exploded after that, and people got a whole lot worse. And but people were still saying, like, yeah, we were hunter gatherers, all clear signs, and we had mammoth drops going back over 1 million years, buffalo drops, Native Americans, all the primal tribes. They were just all hunters. They were all just just hunting and eating animals, and still going on to this day. But now they're starting to argue, say, well, no, actually, not only is it like an ethical thing and all that sort of stuff, but no, we're actually herbivores. I mean, that's just what we evolved on. This is our biologically appropriate diet, is carrot sticks. And then it's just, I mean, it's just like, oh my God, no. And so, if you truly believe that, then you should be able to defend it. If you really know your stuff and you're like, no, this is definitely it, you should be willing to talk about to anybody about it, and just be like, well, no, this is the evidence. This is what it shows. And you both present your evidence, and maybe you don't convince each other, but you give the audience something to think about. And if they're not even willing to do that, if they're so threatened by alternate thoughts, then they can't believe what they're saying all that much.